We'll be
Recording
hearing
in
from
progress.
3 speakers today, and then we'll open the floor for questions during the Q&A period. The Q&A period will be for reporters only, and if you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. For more information, you can go to piperwolf.com where you can find the news release, links to the filings and photos, and also a direct link to the news release is now available in the chat window. As I mentioned, you'll be hearing from 3 speakers today. Our first speaker today will be Joseph Pfeiffer, Managing Partner at Pfeiffer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Our second speaker today will be Officer Keith Poole. Our third speaker today will be Ashley Case Sletfold, Partner at Pfeiffer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. But let's begin with our first speaker. Again, that is Joseph Pfeiffer, Managing Partner at Pfeiffer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Pfeiffer. I'm the managing partner at the law firm of Pfeiffer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway, or Pfeiffer Wolf for short. We are here today to announce the filing of a discrimination charge with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission and a mandamus petition to the Ohio Supreme Court to compel the City of Sheffield Lake Police Department to provide public records documenting race-based harassment committed by former Sheffield Lake Police Chief Anthony Campo. Our client, Officer Keith Poole, who has over 30 years of law enforcement experience, is the victim of not only racist and abhorrent actions taken by his former police chief, his former boss, but also by the City of Sheffield Lake. Shortly, you will hear directly from Officer Poole about what happened and about how he was targeted by the former police chief, including but not limited to an incident where the police chief attached a KKK sign to Officer Poole's jacket. If that wasn't bad enough, that the former police chief was engaged in rampant racist workplace harassment, now the city that hired him, Sheffield Lake, appears to be helping to cover it up. Racial harassment has no place in law enforcement, and we will ensure that the City of Sheffield Lake will face a reckoning for all of the despicable behavior conducted by its former police chief. Officer Poole is a dedicated public servant. Officer Poole is a dedicated public servant who has risked his life to protect and serve his community. He did not deserve to be racially targeted. He did not deserve to be humiliated, and he deserves the truth. It's time that the City of Sheffield Lake comes clean about the racist history of its former police chief and reckons with the effect it's had on the community and its employees. We have no idea how far this went, but I promise you this, we intend to find out. My partner, Ashley Case Sletfold, will dive deeper into the details of this case after you hear directly from Officer Poole. Officer Poole is a hero, a true public servant. It's time that the city he serves get on the right side of history. And if they don't, we intend to make the City of Sheffield Lake do the right thing. That concludes my opening statement. I look forward to taking your questions in the Q&A period.
Good afternoon.
Again, that was Joe Pfeiffer, Managing Partner from Pfeiffer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Let's begin with our second speaker today. Again, that is Officer Keith Poole. Keith, you can begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Keith Poole, Officer Keith Poole. I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years. And I worked for the Sheffield Lake Police Department since September of 2020. And I am proud to be protecting my community. I am sure everyone has seen the video incident in July involving my former boss, the ex-police chief of Sheffield Lake, Anthony Campo. Even when we watch it now, I am in disbelief that this happened to me. It was so demeaning that in a moment, I just didn't know how to react to it. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. Chief Campo thought putting the words Klux Klan sign on my rain jacket and then wearing the Ku Klux Klan hat was something of a joke. Even worse, he told other officers to go look at what he did to me. I would have rather than, at that point, for him to have hit me in my face and for me to be able to protect myself at that moment. It was not a funny joke. It was offensive and humiliating, beyond anything I've ever experienced in my entire career of my life. It took me back to when I spoke to my great-grandmother, who was 100 years old, and the first time I met her, we talked about the family history, and I asked her about, have anybody in my family been involved with the Klan? And she said, yes, her son was killed by the Klan. And that made matters worse from what Campo did to me. And this was not the chief's first time doing something racist and offensive to me or other employees. It was just the first time he got caught on video. And the city failure to turn over the public records documenting his misconduct makes me feel like they want to protect the ex-chief Campo. It was actually typical for Campo to post offensive images targeting officers on the force right on our work bulletin board. These images were racist, sexist, and totally offensive. This man should not be in law enforcement. It was inappropriate for what he did to me. But even though everyone saw them, no one did anything to stop him throughout the years before I even entered that police department. It's clear that Campo doesn't think he did anything wrong. And despite what they said, the city of Sheffield Lake actions make me wonder whether they take this seriously. This didn't happen out of nowhere. It didn't. It wasn't Chief Campo's first time doing something racist, and it never should have gotten to the point that Chief Campo felt comfortable of making a joke about the Klux Klan in our workplace or in any place. I feel it important to raise my voice about this so that the city, the police department, and the police departments across the country understand that this racist, hateful conduct is completely unacceptable, period. So that nothing like this will ever happen again. This is the end of my statement.
Thank you. And again, that was Officer Keith Poole. Let's go to our third and final speaker today. That is Ashley K. Sletvold, partner at Piper Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Please begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashley K. Sletvold, lead counsel for Officer Poole. Today, on behalf of Officer Poole, we submitted 2 filings, a charge of discrimination and a mandamus petition. The discrimination charge was submitted to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, which is our state agency that administers Ohio's anti-discrimination laws. Filing this charge is the first step in initiating a lawsuit for the illegal racial harassment against Officer Poole in his workplace. Officer Poole has been with the city for just over a year now, and he was the first Black officer in its history. As detailed in the OCRC charge, the racial harassment Officer Poole endured was not limited to what was captured on the June 25th surveillance video. Before that, the police chief created an image of Officer Poole as the Grim Reaper and captioned it Raccoon Reaper before posting it for weeks on the department's official bulletin board for all to see. The chief also posted images racially harassing the department's only Hispanic officer, including an image depicting him on a bottle of hot sauce and wearing a sombrero. The chief also sent Officer Poole an image of a vehicle with large rims and heavily tinted windows, with Officer Poole's name printed across the side, saying it would be his police vehicle. The chief also told Officer Poole that it looked like his windows were tinted while he was sitting in a police car with the windows down. Our investigation has revealed that Chief Campo referred to Officer Poole as the N-word and said he did not want an N-word working in his department. From the evidence we've collected thus far, it is clear that Chief Campo made no effort to hide his true character, and senior city officials knew of Campo's behavior but did not stop him, nor did they provide any training on appropriate workplace behavior or how to report incidents of misconduct. Instead, they allowed the chief's behavior to escalate to the events depicted in the June 25th video, where Chief Campo made the Ku Klux Klan sign and put it on the back of Officer Poole's new raincoat, and invited his white colleagues to join him in mocking Officer Poole. Chief Campo then made himself a pointy KKK hat out of paper and wore it in the police department, telling Officer Poole that he should wear it on his next call. This disgusting display of bigotry cannot be tolerated in a civilized society, especially in law enforcement. The stakes are simply too high. The OCRC will investigate Officer Poole's charge and issue his notice of right to sue. At that point, we'll begin his civil rights lawsuit. Now, today's second filing is a petition for writ of mandamus to the Supreme Court of Ohio. Back in July, as part of our investigation into Officer Poole's claims, we submitted a public records request to the mayor of the city of Sheffield Lake. The request sought, among other things, records documenting the chief's prior harassment of employees on the basis of race or other protected classes. These records were created on his city computer and posted on the police bulletin board. The city partially complied with the request, but did not provide the records of the former chief's history of harassment. Our Supreme Court here in Ohio has consistently enforced the public's right to access public records to shine a light on abuse and corruption in government. Officer Poole is a dedicated public servant who endured vicious racial harassment from his superior officer. The petition we filed today on Officer Poole's behalf asks the Supreme Court of Ohio to order the mayor and the city to comply with their statutory duties under the Public Records Act. By insisting on complete transparency and holding public officials accountable for this kind of misconduct, we shape the society in which we want to live. The men and women, like Officer Poole, who bravely serve in law enforcement and protect us every day, should not have to endure racial harassment at work. We are proud to represent Officer Poole and commend him for his willingness to hold his employer accountable. That is the end of my statement, and we look forward to taking your questions.
Again, that was Ashley Case Sletfold, partner at Pfeiffer Wolf Carr, Kane and Conway. And that takes us to the Q&A portion of the call. If you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. And as a reminder, the Q&A period is for reporters only. If you are having issues with your own audio or the raise your hand function, you may also use the text-based Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to all of those questions. Before we begin, I want to mention that a video recording of this news event will be made available online later today at pfeifferwolf.com, along with other media materials. Again, that's pfeifferwolf.com, no spaces. All right, why don't we take our first question? That first question is from Neil Vigdor at the New York Times. Neil, your line, please unmute your line.
Hi, Officer Poole. I'm sorry you've gone through this experience. Are you still with the police department? And how old are you? And what has it been like, continuing, if you are still with the department, continuing to work there in that environment? And what's been the response of your colleagues on the police force?
The answer to your first question, yes, I am still there. I'm 57 years old. Working there since the incident and the removal of Chief Campo has been more upbeat. The guys are okay with me. They don't have no animosity or anything like that, so everything is fine. We're still going forward just like we should be, and we still are protecting the community like we should be, together, without the rigorous of Chief Campo or what he did with me. It has not stopped the other officers from working side by side with me.
And one other follow-up question, if I may. You had mentioned, speaking to your great-grandmother. That conversation was prior to the incident, when was it your great-grandmother's son that was killed by the KKK? I just wanted to go back through that if you could.
Yes, it was. And that was about 9 years ago when I spoke to her. She's died. She passed on. She was 100 years old. We was at her 100-year-old birthday party. It was at a park. I just wanted to know some history on my her dad's side. And she was the one that had a lot to say at 100 years old, believe it or not.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, why don't we take our next question? Our next question comes from Jane Kaufman with the Cleveland Jewish News.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for inviting me to this conference. I'm honored to be part of this, and I appreciate it. Officer Poole, I want to ask you a question, and then I have a question regarding the complaint that was filed. First, I wanted to ask you what your hope is by taking part.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Jane, I think you might have muted yourself accidentally.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you what your hope is regarding these actions, Officer Poole, and then I have a follow-up question.
Regarding his actions?
Regarding taking action in this format. What are your hopes by taking action now? What's the best outcome?
Recognition that this cannot continue in the workforce, especially with Black officers like myself who try and pride themselves into being a community person. All I want to do is help people. That's what my job was designed to do, was to help people. I don't care what color they are, what nationality they are, or who they are. I take pride in making people happy, helping people. So if we can continue to do that, if every agency would take that mentality to try to help more people instead of hurting them, then we'll be a better world. Actually, if I try to be proactive more than reactive, and that's my job. I love helping people.
Why don't we move to our next question? Our next question comes from Kristen Mazur of WOIO Channel 19 News in Cleveland. Your line is now.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you.
Officer Poole, what conversations have you had with either the mayor or any other village leaders since this incident occurred?
None. Not with the mayor. Everything has been status quo. Besides the first conversation we had after the incident when we both were emotional about the incident, but there wasn't really much said in that conversation, but he was trying to tell me he was sorry for what had happened to me, and he didn't know what to say. And I said I didn't know what to say either. It was just one of those things to where we had to, I don't know, just say something to try to get over it. Mind you, I was on vacation when the chief was escorted off. So I didn't know he was actually gone until I came back from vacation.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Our next question comes from WEWS News Channel 5 in Cleveland. Please unmute your microphone.
Hello, Officer Poole again. So sorry about what happened to you. I do have a question. Has the former chief reached out to you or showed any remorse since the incident? And has there been any conversation since the incident?
Absolutely not. He has not reached out to me or anybody at the department. He has not said he was sorry. I have not seen him since the incident.
Then one more follow-up question. Whenever you walked up to your desk and you saw that sign on your jacket, what were your words? What did you say after that? I mean, obviously you said it was very shocking and you didn't know what to do, but did you say anything to him?
My exact words were, "Are you serious?" And I just looked at him and like, what else can you say to the chief of police who done something so heinous and so awful to the first Black officer ever? It's not understandable. I can't understand it. There's no words to captivate what he did to me. My first instinct was anybody's natural instinct to go after him. But then you got to look at it as a policeman's point to where we have to react. We can't react off of negativity because that's our job. If we react off of negativity, then we shouldn't be in that position. So I had to take a step back, and that was hard for me. That was very hard for me. Dealing with a lot of things throughout my life and throughout those moments. There was a lot of things going on in my life at that time that really hurt. And not only did he hurt me, but he hurt my family. He hurt my kids. They had to see that. So now I got to explain to my kids, or they older, but I still had to explain to them and their kids on why is their grandfather going through something like this, or why did that man do that to the grandfather? I have no explanation for it. So what he did was terrible.
And if you could, last one, and if you could speak to him right now, and if he was in front of you right now, what would you say to him?
Why? That's all. Why? And why me?
Thank you so much.
When we take our next question comes from Sarah Shookman with WKYC TV in Cleveland. Sarah, please unmute yourself.
Officer Poole, thank you very much for speaking with us today and sharing your story. I know you mentioned you have a 30-year career in law enforcement. Can you tell us some of the other departments you've worked with and if you've ever experienced racism like this in those other departments?
I first got out of the academy in 2002. I started working in LaGrange, Ohio, which is predominantly all white. They welcomed me with open arms. Never had an issue with them. I worked for them for 6 months. After the 6 months, I started working at Sheffield Village Police Department. Since then, I was working at Grafton Police Department. So these are the departments, not only did I apply, but it's because they asked me to apply. the chiefs there reached out to me and said, we heard of your work ethics and what you do, and we would like you to come work for us. And I did that as part-time. Sheffield Village, I was full-time for 18 years. Never had a problem.
And are you a native of Northeast Ohio? I know you told the story about your great grandmother and her 100-year birthday. Was she a native of Northeast Ohio? And would her son, who was you mentioned was killed by the Klan, would that be your great uncle?
Yeah, I believe my great grandmother was from Alabama. I'm from Lorain, Ohio. So yes, I've been here all my life.
Thank you.
Keith, why don't you describe why you made the move from the village over to the city of Sheffield Lake?
Due to issues with retirement. Over in Sheffield Village, they have a retirement age of 65 and you have to leave. I was short of 2 years of my retirement, and the ordinance that they have could not be changed. So I switched over to Sheffield Lake, who does not have an ordinance. And they welcomed me in to make sure that I receive my retirement.
Thank you. Why don't we take our next question? Our next question comes from Thomas Corrigan with Westlife newspaper. Thomas, please unmute yourself. Thomas, are you able to unmute yourself? All right. Oh, while Thomas figures out the unmute function, why don't we go back to Jane Kaufman with the Cleveland Jewish News for a follow-up question. Jane, your line is unmuted.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, I noticed in the complaint that there is an allegation of religious discrimination, and I wanted to ask about that.
Sure, I'll take that one, Jane. Thanks for the question. The images regarding religious harassment were directed to another employee of the workplace. So this was part of the toxic environment that was created by Chief Campo in the city's police department.
Can you say what religion that person was, if you're able to?
Yeah, the gentleman is Catholic.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we have Thomas Corrigan's line unmuted. Thomas, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes,
All right.
please go ahead.
Officer Poole, I know you work part-time for Sheffield Village. Is there any chance you would be leaving Sheffield Lake for Sheffield Village full-time? Or why do you stick with the Sheffield Lake Police Department?
No, I used to work for Sheffield Village full-time. I came over to Sheffield Lake, and you're correct. I now still work back in the village part-time, and no, I have no reason to leave Sheffield Lake, and that is not in my future plans. I'm gonna stick with what I have.
So you are comfortable staying with Sheffield Lake in Sheffield Lake?
Very much so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Officer Poole, despite everything that has happened to Officer Poole is not a quitter. He's there to serve the community, and he's a hero, and he did not deserve what happened to him. He deserves an apology from that police chief, and he deserves these records to be released by the city of Sheffield Lake. He deserves the truth.
All right, let's go to our next question. We have a follow-up question from Sarah Shookman with WKYC TV in Cleveland. Sarah, please begin.
Yes, Officer Poole, this might be a question for your attorneys to answer, but about the request that you say was only partially filled, are you seeking more details about the disciplinary action that Officer Campo or Police Chief Campo had received in past incidents? Or you also mentioned something like perhaps he had created some of these documents that have been shared on the bulletin board on a work device?
Yes, that's correct. The practice of this police chief was to regularly create images using a website called faceinwhole.com, where he would put images of employees into different images that he obtained from that website, many of them mocking racial, religious, gender aspects of employees' existence and their characteristics, and would post them on the official bulletin board right there in the police department. And we know these two exist. We've collected some of them, and we will hope to see the city of Sheffield Lake provide full copies of what they have. We understand that they secured the police chief's computer device as he was departing. He was placed on administrative leave and then permitted to retire / resign rather than be terminated. So we understand they secured that computer and have accessed it. And so we're continuing to wait for the balance of the records that need to be provided. Part of what they provided was the videos of the incident, Chief Campo's personnel file, et cetera, some of the most basic things, but we've not seen the evidence that we believe to exist regarding the past history of harassment.
And this photo that is shared that's labeled Tapatio, is this an example of this faceinthewhole.com?
Yes, similarly with the Raccoon Reaper image of Officer Poole that's in the filings. Again, that's a face in whole creation by Chief Campo.
Thank you.
Before we go back to additional follow-up questions, let's take a new question from Matthew Richmond with IdeaStream Public Media. Matthew, your microphone is still muted. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself.
Sure. Thanks for taking my question. I'm wondering if any of these other past incidents have resulted in complaints that ended up in former Chief Campo's file?
Not from the records that I've seen. It seems that this was simply his regular workplace behavior. And we also understand that at some point he had implemented a policy that officers were not allowed to speak to anyone other than him in terms of raising complaints. So there was some general concern about retaliation throughout the department, given the way he had behaved in the past.
All right, why don't we take a follow-up question now? Follow-up question from Neil Vigdor at the New York Times. Neil, your line is unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. The video of the incident, was that obtained through the initial FOIA request? Is it just the video, or is there an audio component to that? And two other questions. How many officers are there in the department? And are there any other Black officers that have since joined the department after Officer Poole?
Keith, I'll take that first part and let you jump in for the latter two. The videos that we've shared as part of this news release are public records that we obtained from the city of Sheffield Lake. I think we've split them into two videos. The first depicts the series of events that involves Chief Campo spreading out Officer Poole's raincoat into the form of a KKK robe before putting the Ku Klux Klan sign on the back of it. The second video, which I don't believe has previously been released publicly, is the video of Chief Campo making the makeshift KKK hat out of paper and wearing it in the police department.
Are you guys going to release that second video?
Yes.
Today?
Yes. And to finish responding to your question, there is no audio component to these particular videos. This is a surveillance camera that's mounted in the intake area for when an arrestee comes in for processing. There's a button that you push on the wall to activate the audio component when someone's being processed in. But as a general matter, throughout the day, it's simply the video component that's available. So that's all we have.
Got it.
And you should be able to get the video by contacting Max at the Hastings Group.
Thank you.
Keith, do you want to answer the balance of
Yeah,
Neil's
third
question?
Yes. Third question, yes, we did hire another African American officer. I think he's 30 years old. Real good kid.
And how many officers are in the Sheffield Lake Department?
Approximately at this time is 14 officers.
Well, we want to make sure that reporters on the line have a chance to pose questions, especially while we have everyone here on the line. If you wish to ask a question, as a reminder, you can use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. Again, the Q&A period is for reporters only. And if you're having issues with your audio or raise your hand function, you can also use the text-based Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll try to get to all of the questions. All right, looking back through our list here, it doesn't seem that we have any additional questions at this time. But we want to make sure you know where to get more information following today's news conference. To connect with any of the speakers that you've heard from today, or to get more information, including the video, as Joseph mentioned, you can contact Max Carlin at 216-225-6765. Again, that's Max Carlin at 216-225-6765. His contact details are also included in the news release. A recording of this news event and photos of the related media materials, as well as the related media materials, will be available online at piferwolf.com. They're there now. I want to thank everyone for joining this news event. Again, it was hosted by the law firm Pifer Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. But that concludes today's news event, and thank you all for joining.